China influence.
Tell me if you can see it.
Yeah, I see here.
Right, it should be live now.
Yeah, it's live. I can see it's live.
Can you see a screen moving, Lily? You should be able to see.
No.
Go back to the channel.
Two waiting.
Right, okay.
Well, maybe it's waiting for you to click the button.
It's already, I did. I said it's live. It said live. I've already said it's live.
It says it's live. Can you see if people are joining or?
I can only see 3 people are waiting.
Right. Well, hi, Brian. Hang on. Let me see. Add to stream. We got Brian.
Oh, good to see
you. Right.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.
It's live already, so we are starting right away, huh?
Well, this is the first time I've done this. Okay. I've never done a live stream, so well, not yet.
Are you recording it? I think there's a recording option. Yes. Also, you can record it.
Right. Hang on, Lily. Are we recording this? Tell me we're recording. I don't.
I didn't know.
Okay.
Record this, everything.
Right. Should be recording. Okay. Well, apparently it says we're live, and we've been live for a minute now. I don't know if anybody's watching. I don't know how to share it. I don't know how to invite anybody else. If I hit the share button, if I share a video file, I share a screen. Right, okay, there's somebody on, so we must be visible. Okay? Somebody's saying, love your show based on truth.
Very good.
Oh, Barry, I don't know if it's possible for you to change it, but your name tag says Barry Angelo Bryan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Right, let's do that. Okay. I thought I was naming the video. Okay, we got that. Okay, we got it. Okay, we're live. So, welcome, Brian Berletic and Angelo Giuliano to this is our first live stream from using StreamYard, and we're talking today about this Bombshell video that Angelo has turned up. And so, Angelo, I'm sure that some people will have seen this already now. Can you explain what you were looking for and how this suddenly hit you?
So I've been working like all night long. You know, basically what we are trying to do is to debunk all the fake news about Xinjiang. So basically it's about finding evidence about the funding and the motives of this movement. And I was looking for the connections between this independence movement, ETIM, you know, the terrorist, and also I wanted to check also the relationship with the Military Alliance and the Tibet autonomous movement, you know, like independence movement. And I came across this, you know, this discussion between the new political leader of the Tibet independence movement with the founder of the World Uyghur Congress. Right. And basically, I think they made a mistake because this should never be public. This is something that they should, you know, it's a bombshell because it's exposing the real motives and exactly where they want to go, you know. And I think we talk more about, you know, what the content.
Right, Brian, I'd like to introduce you, but I've read your work as Tony Cartolucci. It's very, very well informed, and I've admired your work. And now I know that it's you that's done this, and you have also joined many dots together in terms of seeing the correspondence between what's happening in Myanmar, in Thailand, in Xinjiang. And I'm guessing you've had a look at this video that Angelo's found as well.
I found it not very surprising, kind of surprising that they would put this on YouTube for people to see. And actually, there's so many things because I went back and I watched the whole thing, not just the part that we'll probably get to, but you know, there's so many things that they reveal about their connections to one another, the hypocrisy of them complaining about, you know, this notion of Chinese imperialism and invading Xinjiang, and this claim of East Turkestan, but also at the same time working with the United States government, working for U.S. State Department funded media and covering U.S. war crimes around the world, but covering it as news for the U.S. government. I just found it ironic, hypocritical, sad, and indicative of this whole movement, how hollow it is inside.
Yeah, and I mean, it's people like yourself and Angelo, me to an extent, and others who, Dan Cohen, who I was hoping would join us today, and of course Grey Zone, who are exposing this actual truth of who's underneath all this. And I noticed, Angelo, when I started making these introduction videos, am I feeding back here? I am. I'm sorry. I'll deal with this. I noticed when I was making these introduction videos and I was looking at this guy who he's connected with the CIA from a way back, the guy at the World Uyghur Congress. Even Wikipedia names him as being working with the CIA.
Yes, he's been to Washington all the time. I mean, you see lots of pictures with him, with George Bush. I mean, it goes back to his father. Actually, his father had met with Richard Nixon in 1970. Can you imagine? While Nixon was opening relationship with China, his father was already meeting up with Nixon.
Right.
So the agendas, didn't start like 10 years ago. It started a long time ago.
Okay.
So I think it's just amazing, and I think when I see this, and I see all the fake narratives, and I see all this movement, like the Tibetans are doing exactly the same thing. Just they're looking good, They have people like Richard J that are whitewashing this movement. And what I want to say. I mean, forgive me the bad word, is that I want to say, shut the fuck up, because we are exposing you for what you are. What you want to bring in China is a Syria, is a Libya scenario. And in the video, you see clearly, they're talking about oil.
Yeah.
So the guy is clearly inviting the US. It's like, oh, you come, you destroy, I'm going to have oil, and you can have my oil.
Yeah. He literally says it. I didn't realize. I thought I'm going to watch like Brian did. I'm going to watch to the end, and then all of a sudden, oil. And the other guy, the Tibetan guy, he's also saying, yeah, the oil companies have contacted him, and he literally says, "It's my oil." Jesus Christ, What do you do, Brian? What's your take on that?
Well, so much for democracy, because wouldn't it be the people's oil, and wouldn't it be for all of them to decide who gets it? And wouldn't a pro-democracy movement demand that it only be used by the people, for the people, and not have outsiders invited in, especially people with track records like the United States government? So again, it just shows it's the mask falling off when they do these things. I've often said that the opposition here in Thailand, in Myanmar, in Xinjiang, Tibet, it's better if they don't say anything at all, and the Western media just spins it, because they are not presentable to the public. When they open their mouth, they say things like this, and it just undermines their agenda.
I see a direct correspondence. We've all mentioned Syria, Libya, Iraq, and most of those things have been strategic, and also with the bonus of stealing the oil. America is currently protecting the oil fields in Syria from Syrians, I guess. We're protecting it and keeping it safe. And you have a direct correspondence between U.S. Anglo-Zionist, if you like, policy in the Middle East and the control, the hegemony of this. And I see this now in the Far East, encircling China and against Russia. It's the same gang and the same game, yeah?
Yes.
Sorry, I should go, Angelo. I should direct this.
Brian has some good stuff about everything which is related to encircling China. Especially now you see, it's all around China. If you look at the map, you see Xinjiang, you see Tibet, you see Myanmar, you see Thailand, what is happening in Thailand, the red shirts. And it's all about, follow the money.
Follow the money.
Who's financing the opposition, the national. It comes down to the National Endowment for Democracy and all the fake NGOs, USAID and so on and so on. And I think Brian, you are an expert. I think there's some really good stuff, especially the last video on Grey Zone on Burma, on Myanmar, which is just exposing what is behind this. And you see the result right now in Myanmar. We are close to a civil war. The pipeline, they were running at 50%. They're threatening to burn the pipeline. They're starting to talk about an exile government that would have access to the funds that are frozen. The same as what they did with Venezuela. Basically, they froze the funds, Venezuela funds, and they gave it to Guaido to manage. So it's a copy and paste. And where I'm shocked is that people do not learn. We tell that, you see what happened with the weapon of mass destruction in Iraq. You saw what happened with all the lies in Libya. The fake news on Syria, over and over, and people don't learn. And we're just fighting so much just to go on mainstream media. They don't invite us because they don't want to listen to what we have to say. But but it's repeating, and it's so frustrating.
History repeating. Yeah, if we don't. Well, it's they do what they want anyway. I remember protesting and writing in 2003, February the 15th. There were millions of people in every major city around the world saying, we don't want you to invade Iraq, quite clearly. 2003, February the 15th. I remember the date. And it didn't seem to matter what anybody said. They just go and do it anyway. So we've got to this point where it doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what the people seem to want and not want. They go ahead anyway. And now as you say, we're now in with this encirclement of China. And is it going to come to a situation where it is really going to get that serious, or will the voice of people be heard in the West, for example? Brian, what do you think? What's your take on that?
It's all a matter of reaching critical mass with this message. If people start to understand this, the big advantage, say the opposition here in Thailand, the big advantage that they have is that the Western media monopolizes information space outside of Thailand and inside of Thailand.
Right.
If that were to change, if Thailand was able to tell its side of the story, especially to international audiences, because actually they have Thai language media here, and people understand it well here, this could start to help turn the tide. That's why it's so important to support alternative media, independent media, because these are the people who are getting this information out there. Let's just say if it weren't for Grey Zone covering all of this information for at least the last 2 years, especially about Xinjiang, would there be any real significant pushback? Because when they put those reports out, other people with influence see it and they say, wow, and then they cover it and the message spreads. This is so important. This is what we can do. If people are not on board with this, the momentum is going to slow down. I think it already is because of economic and military aspects.
Now, you mentioned economics there, Brian, and I was speaking. I don't know if I did a video on this or I mentioned this. I'm so busy lately about the economics of how much money, for example, the US and the banks of the West put into propaganda. It's not just millions, it's billions. This is a very, very heavy investment they put into, as Angelo said, these NGOs, and it's all about publicity, or PR, which was the rename from Edward Bernays of propaganda. They put a huge amount of money into this, which is a huge amount of effort to, if you like, I was going to say win hearts and minds, but it is actually to turn hearts and minds to perceive things the way they want them to be perceived. And I think the point I was trying to make yesterday was China needs to, in my opinion, China should be investing just as much to counter this. I'm not saying China should be like the West, but I think that it seems China's the buck's got to stop at China. China is the backstop on this. And I think China maybe should invest in being able to counter this tirade of anti-China, of anti-world propaganda, actually?
You know, Barry, just I'm going to give you a figure. US AGM, basically, this is the propaganda arm, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. You know, there are many entities that are actually doing propaganda or financing Western outlets. So the figure is $800 million per year for US AGM. So you can imagine it's you know, they've been doing that for a long time, you know, and we are very weak. You see the censorship. There is censorship. You know, they're starting to close a lot of accounts. You know, the last one was a Corbett report. I mean, there's plenty, you know, and it's very gradual. It started from the censorship with Donald Trump, and we, you know, I saw it coming. I was sure, you know, we are going to be the next. Now, when you touch a subject like Xinjiang, which is sensitive, you know, because they're building it's a casus belli. They're trying to make a case for war. We are, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that this video might be demonetized, you know,
This could be the end. This could be the last broadcast ever.
You know, our Twitter account, Brian has been shut from Facebook. You can tell about your experience. You've been shut from Facebook, Twitter, right?
Brian, please relate your experience of this, because you've had this head on, haven't you?
I was basically the only person in English language telling people what was going on inside of Thailand. And I have also been covering the war, the US war of aggression in Syria, their military intervention in Libya since 2011. I was trying to raise awareness in 2011, as soon as the Arab Spring started, that this was engineered by the US. And I was showing people the documents years back with them bringing these people to New York to train and then sending them back. So yes, and I made a lot of enemies on Twitter. I would go to the accounts of the US ambassador or the US embassy, and I would just drop these facts, you know, in the reply. And I don't know who exactly it was who eventually said, get rid of this guy. But on the same day, Twitter and Facebook deleted me. And they deleted my personal accounts too. I was writing under a pen name at that time. So they got rid of my pen name plus my personal accounts and my real name, all on the same day, Twitter and Facebook at the same time. And then there was this smear campaign against me in the media. It was like, because I'm not really that, I really don't think I have that much influence, but they still took the time to smear me. Bellingcat or their digital forensic lab or whatever.
Really? Yeah, what did they do?
Well, they're claiming that I'm Russian disinformation because I contribute to a journal in Moscow. It's a Russian journal in Moscow that covers Eurasia. So I contribute articles to that. They don't tell me what to write. I just contribute articles. If they like it, they publish it. And so somehow that means I'm part of this Russian disinformation network, as if and people have accused me of taking Russian money to interfere in Thailand, which makes no sense at all. What agenda does Russia have in Thailand? And how does this help them by me pointing this out? So it just makes no sense.
So we have a Russian bot on the program as well, folks, you know, as well as a China bot.
I'd like to share my experience, and Brian knows about it. You know, I had a death threat by Francis Buchanan. You know, is one of the leaders of the protest in Thailand, and basically he said on his tweet, you know, Angelo, you know, it's about this my picture and the picture of Tom Fordy, right? And he said those two are on my kill list. His account is still on. No problem. But my account, because I'm talking about sensitive subject, is shadow banned. You know, shadow banning on Twitter, it means that you are not going to gain any followers. Your exposure is going to be limited. And you see the double standard. I mean, the guy is still there. He's not banned, you know, and there's an open death threat.
Yeah.
And the media knew about it because everyone tagged Human Rights Watch in Thailand and all these fake human rights groups. Not one of them brought it up.
Right. Now, this is not just you, Angelo, but I'm guessing, Brian, you probably had threats too.
I guess not really. I don't know why, but no one has threatened me. Not yet.
Maybe you didn't see them and deleted. Maybe you just delete comments before looking.
Maybe, I don't know.
I noticed we're talking about Twitter and Facebook, and we know what Facebook do, but I know that Twitter specifically have worked with the ASPI. It was the ASPI in collaboration with Twitter. They've been very public about it. Who advised them what accounts to close. So you think, well, okay, if ASPI are corruptible enough for Raytheon, I guess they're corruptible enough for Twitter.
Absolutely. And one other thing about Twitter, they recently made that Milk Tea Alliance emoji in open support of this U.S. State Department project, because that's what it is. The only common denominator these groups have is that they hate China, and they're funded by the U.S. government. And so Twitter is promoting this. And Twitter has openly worked with the State Department in the past. They were contacted by the State Department to delay a maintenance upgrade on their network because the U.S. was running their operation in Iran at the time. And then they did it. They complied. They were working hand in hand with the State Department to help execute a color revolution, basically, in Iran. So this is something they do all over the world to everybody. And China obviously is center stage now. It is the peer competitor with the U.S. And this is something that they never wanted. They never wanted a peer competitor, especially in East Asia.
Yeah. So this is where ultimately the buck must stop really at China's door. This is where we are. Yeah. And so the way forward for people like us is how do we step outside of this shadow banning, out of this suppression? Well, I mean, what I did was create bestchinainfo.com. Was just I've got a website. If all else fails, I can talk through there. Which of course I will try to publish articles from all kinds of people and keep linking to things from there. But it's limited. I need to get a new server which is more accessible, maybe. But so, what's the way forward for us to fight against this thing?
I have no idea. It's getting very difficult. I think we barely make it to. I mean, a few of us can make it to RT and. But it's very rare that getting to BBC and so on. We might we might have like 5% of audience. 5% once in a while they bring you on. But the problem is that it's this whole thing about manufacturing consent. When people hear 9 times the same thing, it's ingrained. It's in the subconscious. They and just once in a while they hear something. It's not something that I hear usually. Might be conspiracy theory, I mean this, and they brush off this whole thing. So now they've been associating China with bad. You see the effect, how the West was favoring China, the outlook of China. I mean, basically 10 years ago, 70% of people, they loved China. They had seen the Olympics and so on. And now in 2 years' time, now you have like 20-30%, of people that actually like China. I mean, otherwise it's China bad. It's all about China bad. So if tomorrow, I tell you, Barry, if tomorrow I start to say China bad, tomorrow I'd be on BBC. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, what was the turning point? Because I do remember this point when China wasn't the bad guy, when the relationship was good. Brian, what do you think was this turning point when suddenly China was the bad guy again?
This was when the U.S. realized that they weren't going to co-opt China, that the people in China have their own interests. They have no real reason or motivation to be second place to the United States or to be subordinate in a unipolar international order. Between China and Russia, they've been talking about this multipolarism for a long time now. And this is attractive to everybody. Everyone wants multipolarism because it's fairer. There is no one single nation that is going to unilaterally act on the international stage. So everyone is for this. And then as this started to gain momentum, I think that's when the U.S. said, look, we're going to stop trying to co-opt them, and we're going to do everything we can to just stop them. This actually, to be honest, if you look through the Pentagon Papers, containing China is something that stretches back decades. And this was always the agenda. They used different tricks, the carrot and the stick, but the ultimate goal was subordinate China. They will never surpass the West. It will not be allowed. That was their doctrine then, decades ago, and it's their doctrine today.
And this is bipartisan. This is not particular to one party or the other.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter who's in the White House or who's in Congress. It is one single agenda that grinds forward regardless.
Mm-hmm. Angelo, what's your take on if I were to say, if we look at this video, if we go back to your diamond that you've dug up, this thing where in their own words they are in effect it's a declaration of war, yeah?
Yes.
And in the next breath they're saying, and we're ready to sell you our oil once you win this war for us. What's your take on this? This is public. We're making it public. That's kind of the point of what we're doing. We made this a very public thing. It's out in the open. You found it. It's now. This should, as you say, this should probably go. This should explode, because it's their words. And again, Brian, you said that they've said this. This is our words. It's a declaration of war. They're inviting what they say, Mujahideen or whoever, to join them in this fight against China. It's a declaration of war. Now this is open, and it's back to 2015. The smokescreen of the so-called oppression of Uyghur people is kind of blown away, isn't it?
I think, how much can they lie? I mean, we are talking about the most prominent figures on the Tibetan side and on the Uyghur side. It doesn't go any higher. So basically you have those two persons that are financed by the CIA. I mean, there's ample proofs, it's been proven that the Dalai Lama since the 1960s has been financed by the CIA. There's even the brother of the Dalai Lama just said openly, well, he's been financed, but now he has some regrets. But it's of course you've been exposed. That's why, And then you have the founder of the World Uyghur Congress that is telling us that, And I think I doubt he wanted that video to be out, because this is this is a checkmate for us, because you see the narratives. We're talking about all those fake news about concentration camps. It's just absurd, and it's from people that don't know anything about China. They don't speak the language. They've never been there, and they're relying. Very well. This is a subject for you. Very well where the information come from, the source. And who's financing those people, and it's turning around, it's going around. It's like, the BBC says, well, Adrian Zenz told me, this is, and then Adrian Zenz say, well, some media, and then so on, and the figures, it comes down to, sometimes they say the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. That's a huge one. I mean, talking about 1 million, that's ridiculous. I mean, my background, I've been in China for 25 years. I know exactly, the situation in Xinjiang, in Tibet, in Xinjiang, you can travel freely. There might be restriction. There are some restriction in Tibet, but you can go freely and you can go check, there's no such camp. It doesn't exist. They are, they have programs, poverty alleviation, and they have programs of de-radicalization. So what the US did, when they had terrorism, they killed 1 million people. In China, they re-educated people. They're giving them education. They get them out of poverty. When you talk about human rights, I think the problem is that the US and the West, they have appropriated the words of democracy and human rights. But you know what? Living in China, I find that the system is much more democratic than in the US.
Absolutely.
I think in this discussion, remember, what they call lobbying in the US. In China, they would call, bribery, and you'd go for
it's illegal.
I think, I just leave it. I think we should go back maybe just to the video, because this is a bombshell, really. Just to talk about the oil, and what they're saying. I think this is just crazy. What's your take, Brian?
Well, I want to point something out about this World Uyghur Congress. Even in the video, he says we preach nonviolence, but then he goes on talking about his dream scenario of this cascading insurgency that he hopes to see inside China's borders,
Right.
Tibet, Xinjiang, and he's talking about Mongols and all of these different groups that he hopes rise up at the same time, and importing these foreign fighters. But he's always slipping in peaceful nonviolence. This is a trick that they do. Obviously, the very nature of separatism, especially in a country like China, they're not just going to give you Xinjiang to make your own country. You know, and they know that, the only way to do it is with violence, and even then, it's not tenable. But I want to point out this old article from 2014, New York Times. Chinese court sentences teenagers to death in killing of Juma Tahir, Islamic cleric. This was in Xinjiang, and this was one of the clerics that were trying to teach real Islam, not this extremist version imported from Saudi Arabia. And at the very end of the article, they quote the World Uyghur Congress, and they're condemning the Chinese government for a harsh sentence. And basically what they're saying is punishing these people for murder is wrong, and it's just going to make the problem bigger. Now, this is not what a nonviolent organization would actually say. They would condemn violence no matter who carried it out. So this is the same sort of hypocrisy we see across all US-backed so-called democracy or human rights organizations. And I just wanted to point that out, because when people watch this video and listen to this guy, and he keeps putting out the word nonviolent there, that is camouflage. It is a smokescreen that he is supporting violent separatism from behind.
And again, you mentioned the support of violence, even though they profess to be non-violence. And Angelo, you've seen this in Hong Kong too.
Yeah, I was living this on a daily basis, and believe me, in Hong Kong it was riots from morning till evening. And I saw the news, and I was looking at what they were doing on in the streets, and I had to speak out. At the beginning I was not interested to join in. I thought it was a Chinese internal problem, but when I saw the meddling, you had clearly like CIA agents running around. It was obvious they were giving instructions to rioters. Those guys were trained, they were financed and so on. And at some point I said, no, stop, that's enough. You know what? You're burning my house. They had slogans. They were saying, well, if we burn, you will burn with us. It was immature. And I have some experience in politics. I was elected in the city council of my hometown in Switzerland. So I have some experience in direct democracy, and it's running really well in Switzerland. But you know what? That movement in Hong Kong was a fascist movement. It was extremely anti-democratic, and it was all BS when they were talking about human rights and freedom. You know what? For 1 year, I had lost my freedom. When I was going out in the streets, I had my cap, my sunglasses on, a mask, because I was afraid to be beaten up because I spoke out. And you know what they did? They exposed the picture of my son and my daughter.
And then it becomes personal,
and it's personal. So I think it's just disgusting. And just to go back to Xinjiang, what is worrying right now in Xinjiang is that ETIM has been delisted. It used to be on the terrorist list. It's been delisted by Pompeo. What it means is that basically now they legitimize this movement, and they can fully finance and support this movement. That is really shocking. That is really disgusting. And nobody's talking about this. This is big. This is big.
Brian, something Angelo mentioned about we burn, you burn, and I taught Thai students in China for 3 or 4 years, and now obviously at the moment I don't. And my Thai students who've gone back to Thailand I just shocked me. My students, they should know better. They are kind of swallowing this whole narrative again. We burn, if we burn, they burn. What you're in Thailand right now? What's are they still buying this story?
Luckily, the protests seem to have died out. I mean, they claim that it's because of the third wave of COVID, but before that, there were like 20 or maybe 50 people at most showing up at some of these demonstrations. But who was the first bunch who were saying if we burn, you burn? It was the U.S.-backed billionaire Tonaton and his political party.
Right.
This is a guy who, before the 2019 general election, traveled to the United States to lobby for support there. Or more likely, the lobbyists were managing him like a entertainer's manager. Would bring him to the United States so that he could meet with Freedom House. Exactly, and send him back. And so he was monkeying all of the same song and dance that we saw in Hong Kong. And as a matter of fact, Tonaton, this billionaire, went to Hong Kong and met personally with Joshua Wong and the so-called student leaders, these students that this billionaire is hiding behind. They also traveled to Hong Kong and met with Joshua Wong and Nathan Law. So again, it's the same pattern. The same common denominator is hating China and U.S. government backing.
Right. You've mentioned a few names here, and it's again, you're joining dots. We're all joining dots here. I was about to make a video which connects up Marco Rubio, because I know I've seen his name on the bill that gives Israel 3.3 billion in arms defense every year, American taxpayers' money. What to do? What? Oh, to buy American-made arms. Great. Okay, that's useful. And then his name is also on bills which attack China over Xinjiang. And I also noticed that one of the first letters from, as far as I'm aware, from a U.S. figure back to April of 2018 was a letter from Rubio to the ambassador, the American ambassador to China, and where he's saying, we need to, I forget the guy's name, Bradley or something, and Rubio's name is he's neck deep in most of these things, including, now you mentioned Joshua Wong. Marco Rubio had a $500,000 donation to his presidential run, from a guy who was making a movie promoting Joshua Wong as the new savior of Hong Kong. And you're right, Brian, Angelo, we know they're all the same gang. They're all tied together, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's important just to have a higher view, to look at the details. There's many elements. There's oil, there's the Belt and Road Initiative, there's the pivot to Asia, how to contain China, how to close the maritime routes, Malacca Strait. There's so much, But to my opinion, there's one subject that should be touched more. I think it's where it hurts the most for the U.S. It's all about the U.S. dollar and the hegemony of the U.S. dollar. You see what happened just before. They used to, China was happy to recycle its money into buying more U.S. bonds. China is a surplus, so usually what do? It's a Ponzi scheme. You still reinvest your money into U.S. bonds, and basically you're financing the high standard of living of Americans, and it's not sustainable. So the casus belli that will happen with China, Russia, and the US is when Russia just dumped completely all its US bonds. And what China did, it stopped completely buying US bonds. So basically, what China is doing, what it was supposed to do was recycle into US economy. What decided China was to recycle this into the Belt and Road Initiative. And I think it's extremely smart. So the problem right now is that, the superpower is holding on its US dollar hegemony. Now that you have countries that are dumping the dollar, not only in US bonds, just dumping the bonds, and they are investing into infrastructure project, and they're stopping trade, between the US, between Russia and China. They're not trading in US dollar. Now it's a marginal what they trade in US dollar. So the relevance of US dollar it's becoming completely irrelevant. And the US is still printing. So basically you keep on printing and the market becomes smaller. Basically you're gonna collapse.
Brian, you mentioned Libya, and you were there. You were kind of covering that whole story. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, was that Gaddafi was, as they say, the US government say, we're going to take him out, not to dinner or on a date, but we're going to take him out. And I think at some point, just prior to this, he made the decision to step outside of the dollar, as did Saddam Hussein. Is that correct?
It's hard to say whether that triggered it or not, because the U.S. has been trying to overthrow Gaddafi for decades. All the way back to the 80s, they had the same exact plan. It just never materialized. In 2011, it finally materialized. So I don't think that helped his case. If that's what Libya did, it definitely didn't endear Libya to the West. I know that the West pretended to try to fix and smooth things over with Libya and also Syria, and there was some cooperation going on there to kind of have them take their guard down. But this was something that was going on. The Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. So we mentioned the Uyghur extremist group, the terrorists. This is the exact same thing with the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. That they were listed as terrorists, and then they were taken off the list. They were harbored in the UK, and they're still carrying out vicious attacks there in the UK now. And we see the same thing with the groups in Syria and also Iran, the MEK. So I mean, it's like the same pattern.
Right, this same pattern. So I'm thinking, I'm seeing a clear message here is that Myanmar, Thailand, Xinjiang, China, whoever, if you want to see what's coming, the delivery of liberation and democracy to your country, take a look at Libya, Syria, etc. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with democracy. I think it's just all smokescreen. I mean, you see regime like Saudi Arabia and so on. I think I like the position of the government, Chinese government. They just making the US to face its contradictions. Why? You're pointing the finger to China, while China has lifted up 750 million people out of extreme poverty. I mean, if you are talking about human rights, those are the human rights. You go to the US right now and you see how many homeless, and they claim they have a government by the people, for the people, of the people. It's not, it's of the 1%, by the 1%, for the 1%,
Exactly.
Look at the Congress, they are all multimillionaire. Pelosi, 150 million net worth. Biden is 7 million net worth. Mitt Romney is 200 million. Are they representative of people? No. You go to the Chinese national, like the Congress, Chinese Congress, you'll see those are representative of the people, and they deliver. They do deliver.
Yeah, it's measurable. You can measure what's done in China. Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure where else we can go other than to maybe we can wind this up. And do we have some closing statements, Brian? Let's go back to our original diamond in the dark from Angelo. What do you think?
I think that it exposes their hypocrisy, how empty they are. Angelo was mentioning about Beijing's policy of poverty alleviation. They are developing infrastructure not only in Xinjiang but also Tibet and everywhere all across China and also beyond China into Southeast Asia. And we can see the US pouring millions and millions and millions of dollars every year into these opposition groups. They have done nothing to improve the lives of the people in those regions. These ethnic groups in Myanmar, millions and millions of dollars since World War II, and even before that, under the British Empire. Those people are still living in absolute poverty. And you can see the exact same ethnic groups on the other side of the border in China or in Thailand. And you can see government programs led by the king here in Thailand to lift those people out of poverty, to give them something to do other than grow opium and fight ethnic groups and the central government. And also in China, the programs to develop infrastructure. So you can compare and contrast the West's approach to this and how empty their concern for human rights and development and democracy versus what China's actually doing to tangibly improve the lives of these people.
Yeah, you can quantify the difference. Yeah.
Yes.
Angelo, last word from yourself.
I'd like to mention, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a Plaza Accord, it was, at that time, it was in the 80s. The world, I mean, especially the US, they wanted to contain Japan because Japan was about to surpass US economy. So basically, they squeezed Japan and they put lots of restrictions. They controlled the exchange rate, and the yen became too expensive. So and I think what is happening now is that they're threatening China and they want to contain it. because it's the Thucydides trap. It's when there's a power that is coming out, that is surpassing. It's the same as what happened in the World War One. You had Germany that was becoming a superpower, and but France and England, they wanted to contain, and it's the same. And I think with China. Chinese, they say, 我不吃这一套, 中国不吃这一套, meaning we're not eating it, we don't buy it, we're not Japan, it's a country that is strong, they know what they have in their hands, and the 100 years of humiliation is gone, this is past. Now they're not hegemonic, and they want to be treated on equal terms. And I think China is the hope for the world, for a peaceful world, which is going to be more democratic, because we are going to give a voice to the global South. And I think this is important. The global South has been colonized. Maybe this is the stepping stone of we are going to start a new era of decolonization.
Yeah. I'd like to close with a speech I remember. Actually, this is strange. Why this is coming to my head, I don't know. This was a speech given to Harvard East Coast America graduates, the cream of the crop, by David Rothschild. This is about 15 years ago. And he said, for 200-300 years and more, the balance has been 20% Asia, 80% the West. He said, I'm telling you now, the rest of the future, the foreseeable future, will be 80% Asia, 20% the West. And that's the way it's going. And this was his statement. So I'll go with that.
Yes. You know what? I think it's we need to look at history. The U.S. hegemony, it's when you look at history, it's a very short time, But looking back at the last 2,000 years, more than 50% of the global economy was China and India. I think it's just an anomaly, and I think it's just about the trigger was the Opium War, when everything changed. China was caught unprepared, but now like they've learned, and those guys, the difference with Chinese, they studied the West. They know themselves, they studied the West. What happened now, why the US is lagging? Because then they don't know anything about China. They have a short, attention span in history. And I think that ignorance is going to be the failure of the West.
Ignorance and greed, avarice. The love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your company. It's been scintillating, actually. And Brian, it's great to welcome you to the fold. And I hope that we'll be doing a lot more conference and communication and sharing a whole bunch more stuff for people out there to share in.
And thank you very much for having me. And Angelo, always a pleasure to talk with you as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right, I think, do I end it? It should be ended, I think.